Welcome to Rod Doing Rod. Thanks for joining me. So today's episode is going to be about the top 10 role players in hip hop history. So when I say role players, I'm talking about rappers who you might associate them with another rapper who's bigger, who's more of a superstar, but the role players that I'm talking about played their part as well. And some of them actually ended up being stars at some point also. But for the most part, they were just known as being dope by themselves, and they contributed to, like, you know, another artist or label being dominant at a time, and that artist or label probably benefited from this role player being dope on his or her own. So that's what we're going to do today. Before we get into that, I just got to say, Old Dirty Bastard said, "Off on a natural charge, bon voyage." I never really thought about it. Like, that's me. That's my life. Like, that's how I want to live. I'm on a natural charge. Bon voyage. I'm out. You know, like, Old Dirty. Sometimes I just think about Old Dirty lyrics, like Old Dirty's verse in Reunited. Fam, anybody who knows me, anybody who listens to me knows that I think that's one of the dopest Wu-Tang verses ever. I'll break it down another time. But anyway, shout out to Old Dirty. Rest in peace, Osiris. All right. So the top 10 role players in hip hop history. Let me give some honorable mentions really quick. I'm going to give an honorable mention to Lady of Rage. Lady of Rage was so dope. I mean, you can arguably say she might have been pound for pound lyrically the best female rapper. I mean, go back and listen to what she was spitting. But we didn't get a full album, so I don't know. I'm not even sure if she ever dropped that in the future. Not in the future, but like in the future from the past. You know what I'm saying? Like back in 92 when, you know, Death Row was hot. And I don't know if like somewhere along the line, 99, 2000, you know, artists decided to drop their album eventually, their old album. I don't know if she did that. Anyway, Rage was dope. And she played a hell of a role as the female who was hanging with the males, because she was hanging with, you know, Corrupt and Snoop and everybody on that label. So big up to Rage. Another honorable mention, Sauce Money. Who do you associate Sauce Money with? Jay-Z. He wasn't on Rockefeller, so you don't really associate him with Rockefeller, but like he's in that Jay-Z universe. He's a role player in that Jay-Z universe. And anybody who knows Sauce Money is one of the dopest lyricists. Like, as far as trying to just go against a lyricist, you spit your bars, he spits his bars. Not many rappers are fucking with Sauce. He's like J level nice. And obviously Sauce got his, right? He wrote I'll Be Missing You by Diddy. He won a Grammy. So, and he won't let you forget it. So, and he shouldn't. So Sauce Money, honorable mention role player. Another good honorable mention as a hip hop role player is John Forté. You know, tragic story. He ended up going to jail. I can't remember for what. Was it like robbery or something like that? And he had a whole like weird thing where I guess his family knew one of those actresses like Carrie Fisher, something like that. I don't know. But they helped him out in his case. You know, he's one of those, I guess, private school kids and everything. But he was immensely talented. We associate him with the Fugees. He's in that Fugees universe. He was a role player. And a lot of people thought he could be a star. He had lyrics. He had flow. He had that voice. Unfortunate circumstances, though. Big up John Forté. I'm pretty sure he's out now. And he was one of the dopest role players. Next honorable mention, Cappadona, Cappuccino from Wu-Tang Clan. When Kappa came out, like, Wu was the kind of group where like everybody was dope, everybody was nice, and like all of them was like the dopest MC. You know what I'm saying? Like they each were as dope as any MC that was out. And Cappadona was he could hang with all of them. Like Wu-Tang had all these other rappers that were in their orbit, but yeah, all of them weren't as good. You know, Shaheem, and you know, you had your Killer Sin and Killer Priest and stuff here and there. But for the most part, a lot of those rappers couldn't hang. But Cappuccino, he felt like the 10th member, sometimes the 9th member. And he was, you know, when he came out, like Winter Wars, the Winter Wars verse is one of the dopest verses in the Wu-Tang catalog. You know, the Ice Cream verse, Kame, you know, like Cappuccino was fire. He doesn't make it in the top 10, though, because on his own, he just, like, his first album, a lot of people said it was whack. Let's be honest, you know, but Cappuccino, he has some of the best verses you're ever going to hear. The last honorable mention will be Dragon. Dragon we associate with Rough Riders. Dragon was a beast with the lyrics. Just one of those dudes that, like, he just had them bars. You know, I remember he said, leave a hole in your face shoe the size of a bagel. All my bullets hit, never graze you. If you never won shit, I'ma promise you this, I'ma front page you. Like Dragon had bars. Dragon was dope. Again, when he had to do his own thing, he didn't hold it down as much as some of these other artists, or maybe it's unfair. Maybe I really wasn't following Dragon like that, but we're gonna move on. So those are my honorable mentions. Now, my top 10 hip hop role players. Number 10, Rod Digger. Who do we associate Rod Digger with? We associate her with Flip Mode, right? But Rod Digger is also down with Outsiders, right? So Rod Digger has skills. We know that. Like in that Flip Mode era, when they was making songs with Mariah Carey and doing all that, like Rod Digger kind of was the one besides Busta that you cared about hearing, you know? So as far as Flip Mode goes, I don't think they would have really done much without Rod Digger. And Rod Digger did her thing also just as a solo rapper. And she appeared in, like, she was on The Score, I believe, by the Fugees. Am I making that up? I think she was. And Rod Digger is just dope on her own. So we definitely going to give her that spot. One of the dopest female rappers ever. So we give that spot to Rod Digger. Number 9, we're going to go with Freddie Fox. Number 9 on the list of the top hip hop role players of all time. Freddie Fox we associate with Gang Starr. Now, this list these are rappers who, when you think about them, you think of another rapper. Like, as far as their group or their label or their clique, there's somebody else, maybe one or two people who are bigger than them. They're not the star. They're the role player. And Freddie Fox was a role player in the Gang Starr universe. Obviously, the Star, Premier, and Guru. And I even think Group Home kind of had a bigger peak, maybe, than Freddie Fox. Yeah, I don't know. But I feel like at least in New York radio, they did. But Freddie Fox is a legend. You know, Freddie Fox made music with John Cena, which for me, that's a big plus. But just like, you know, you talking about the Militia, you talking about Freddie Fox right now, he's better than he ever was. I didn't appreciate Freddie Fox before, but he has bars. He always had bars. He could perform his ass off. Freddie Fox is gonna get number 9, one of the dopest role players, and as a solo artist, has a hell of a legacy on his own. So that's Freddie Fox, number 9. Number 8, we're gonna go Freeway. Freeway, who do we associate with? Rockefeller. 2000s, mid 2000s Rockefeller, right? Now, when we think of that label in that time, obviously Jay-Z, then we go Beans, and then probably Freeway. You know, now we also had our PD Crack, our Young Guns, Rel, all of that at the time. Freeway brought something different. Freeway's flow, as everybody knows, is a lot different. The way he hits those rhyme patterns, the way he delivers it, that voice, it was just ultra unique. And Freeway, I just had that feeling that he could have been a star on his own. I think Rockefeller could have had like 4 stars. You could have had Jay, Beans, Freeway, and PD Crack. Not dissing Memphis Bleak, but I felt like those could have been like, you know, the quartet right there. And, you know, it didn't happen. But for a few years there, Freeway played his role. And Freeway was on other people's songs, just killing it. And you definitely can't put down Freeway. Maybe he didn't become that star, but for a while right there, he captured the imagination of the hip hop universe. Let's go to number 7, my dude, Tragedy Gaddafi. Now, who do you think about when you hear Tragedy Gaddafi? Maybe if you're old head, you might think of Juice Crew. He was in the Juice Crew as a role player, right? Because Juice Crew is Big Daddy Kane and Cool G Rap and Craig G and everything like that, right? Master Ace. But he was in the Juice Crew. But I think of Capone and Noriega, and I just think sort of that whole Queens thing, that whole Queens universe with Nas and, you know, just all of those guys, Mobb Deep, everything like that. So, but Tragedy is kind of their OG, and Tragedy put a lot of stuff together from what I heard and from what I see online, controversial stuff depending on who you see, who you listen to. And also Tragedy has some of the dopest mixtape verses you ever gonna hear in your life. I love listening to Tragedy Gaddafi rhyme. He got this song with Iman Thug, I'm a thug. What's that song? And I just don't wanna stop. I can't sing, but whatever. I don't want to stop. So, but he on a couple Clue tapes where he rhyming with Nori, Cameron, Mace, Pierre Cardin, all that, and tragedy goes off, yo. Yo, Allahu Akbar, I'm a classy thug. Don't pass me love in the court, fucking the judge. Executive thug, rebelling, consecutive felon. I got 5 wives that specialize in the art of knives, yo. Setting willies up, taking fake niggas' lives, yo. Fam. Tragedy is a beast on his own. He might not have had super commercial success, but Tragedy is a fucking monster. So hip hop role players, I'm number 7. I'm gonna go Tragedy. Number 6, we're gonna go AZ. AZ is in the Nas universe. Now, it's kind of weird to call AZ a role player. He's in the group The Firm. I don't feel like he was a role player in The Firm. He was one of the people who made The Firm. But The Firm didn't end up being as successful as it should have been. Okay, it flopped. Let's just, all you people that I turned pop when The Firm flopped, it flopped. Let's just be honest. But The Firm had some dope joints, and AZ been dope. He had his little moment. I'm not gonna call it a little moment. He had his moment. That's condescending. That's not as disrespectful. Sugar Hill is a hip hop classic. It's big. It's a bigger classic than rappers who are bigger than him. And AZ lyrically, even now, most rappers can't touch him. He is a role player. He didn't end up becoming like a main character in hip hop like that. But rappers know, respect him. Heads know AZ fire. He's number 6. Number 5, we're gonna go Royce the 5'9". Again, controversial to call him a role player, but he's in the Eminem universe. Okay. And when you think of the Eminem universe, you might think of Eminem, then you might think of like D12, 50 Cent, if you consider that the same universe, but I don't know. And Royce might be the best rapper in the world. Him or Black Thought, right? That's what I think. So, which is interesting. But as far as his impact beyond like that kind of idea, best rapper and stuff like that, he himself, he had the Bad Meets Evil, which was a huge album, right? Multi-platinum. But it wouldn't have been as big if it wasn't for Eminem. But that's one of those things where you can say that, but the music justified it. Because Royce is as good as Eminem. He was as good as Eminem then. Now he's clearly better than Eminem. So, but the thing is, Royce, besides that, I don't know if Royce as a role player contributed to greater success for anybody else, or even himself until recently. This run that he's had in the last few years, which is amazing, and that's a whole other thing that we'll talk about at another time, late career runs. But number 5, Royce the 5'9". Number 4, my rappers who are all-time role players, Killer Mike. Killer Mike is one of those guys. He's one of the dopest rappers around also, and has been for a while. He's in the Dungeon universe. When you think of Dungeon family, you're talking Outkast, you're talking Goody Mob, and a few other people, maybe before you get to Killer Mike. Killer Mike is as dope as any of them. He's as dope as Andre 3000. Sorry, you don't believe me? Yes, he is. Anyway, so Killer Mike obviously also joined with my man, I forget his name, the white dude, and they Run the Jewels, right? So I don't mean to disrespect him because he's fire also. Run the Jewels, and the string of albums has been amazing, and Killer Mike's impact socially and politically has also been off the charts. So, Killer Mike definitely deserves a high spot in hip hop role players. He remained a role player. He didn't end up on his own getting that moment in hip hop, but the Run the Jewels run is kind of deserves applause. So Killer Mike. Number 3, all-time hip hop role player. Now these top 3, you can put them in any order, but we're gonna go number 3, the Doc, DOC. DOC, I remember when DOC debuted. When we're talking about The Formula was the second single. Funky Enough, oh my God. One of the best rap songs you're ever gonna hear, even to this day. Had that voice, and tragically, he lost the voice, and that's why he didn't end up fulfilling the promise of that first album. But that album was fire, And he's one of the people behind the success of Death Row, right? One of those people who was there from the beginning, a writer, making sure these guys went from people who knew how to spit to people who knew how to write dope songs. And he's always been there, still has that talent, and just one of those music people, like, you know, and if you've ever watched any interviews or listened to any interviews, he's an incredibly smart guy, father of one of Erykah Badu's children, if you didn't know that. And yeah, I mean, DOC had his moment when he was one of the dopest things in hip hop himself on his own. And at the time, I guess he was in the NWA universe at the time, but on his own, he was like the dopest thing going. And out of the rappers on this list, that has only been the case for about, as I look at the list, maybe 3 or 4 of them, maybe just the top 3. So number 3, DOC. Number 2 on the list of hip hop role players, second best hip hop role player, you could put him first if you want to, Keith Murray. Keith Murray's in the universe of that Def Squad universe. When you have that universe, you're thinking of Redman, you're thinking of Eric Sermon, but you might think of Keith Murray as soon as you think of one of these other dudes, because that's how much of a beast Keith Murray was. And at a time, I don't know how you tune it, but if you just would have tuned it a certain way, Keith Murray probably could have been like top 5. If not all time, like for a certain amount of years. Because when he came in with that Most Beautifulest thing, yo, we hadn't heard anything like that. And he had that. It wasn't just, you know, it sounded a little gimmicky at first with the big words and everything. But then as you're listening to the song, you're like, of course, the Eric Sermon production is dope. And the way Keith Murray is hitting that flow and them lyrics. And then as you heard the other songs and the features, you were like, oh, this guy is a beast. Then he was getting on other people's songs and murdering them, like in the LL song, I Shot Ya. I'm here to make $1 out of 15 cents and let my balls hang like I'm on the toilet taking a shit. Like, he was one of the dopest intro bars rappers. Like, his intro bars were some of the dopest you'd ever get in hip hop. He was on the remix to Can't You See, right? He was standing on the basketball court. I think he was standing on the Lex, you know, yeah, that verse was dope. And the original Who Shot Ya, you get a little taste of it on that in the Mary J. Blige album of what Keith Murray did on the Who Shot Ya. I heard that it was even iller than that they changed it a little bit. But Keith Murray himself had his moment where he was one of just the brightest stars in hip hop. And he has some difficulties and stuff following that up and didn't really fulfill the promise. But Def Squad continued. He came back when he needed to and ended up being just more like a really, really good 6-man, really good role player than the superstar that some people felt that he could have been. So number 2, Keith Murray. And number 1 role player in hip hop history, Warren G. I'm serious, Warren G. Now, some of you might be like, what the fuck do you mean Warren G? Now, Warren G had a moment when he was the biggest thing in hip hop, period. He was one of the biggest things in music. No one else on this list can say that. And I just looked at the list. No one else on this list can say that they were the biggest thing in music at the time. He wasn't the biggest thing in music, but he was one of the biggest things in music. Now, that's when West Coast really first started dominating, and Def Jam went and got a bunch of West Coast rappers, and Warren G was on Def Jam, so he had that behind him. And then he was in that Death Row universe, you know, like he would be talking about Snoop and Dre, and he was in that universe, but he kind of was his own thing because he was never signed to Death Row. And if you could remember that time, we talking 92, 93, not 92, we're talking, I think, 93, 94, with this DJ be Warren G. Like, they were playing his singles in New York, like his first 3 singles, you know. Then the other one, you had This DJ, then you had it's kind of easy when you're listening to the G of sound, Pioneer speakers pumping as I smoke on the pound. Remember that, like Warren G. And If you listen to Ain't No Fun, Warren G comes at the end just on some playful woo, hey, now you know. They say all this horrible shit, like horrible shit. He's like, woo, hey, now you know. In case you didn't know, he just wanted to reinforce that, right? And then Warren G comes with his verse, and it's dope, right? But he was always kind of around in the orbit doing his own thing. Regulate, one of the all-time hip-hop classics, right? And he continued, I think the next album when he had like the I don't know, I feel like it was a Tina Turner remake or something like that. I think he might have had a Dina Howard or something in it. But Warren G was huge, pause. Like he was one of the biggest things in hip hop. And, you know, I just feel like when he's a role player though, because when you think of that era, West Coast, early to mid 90s, and you think of so many rappers before him, obviously, you know, you're thinking of your Snoops, Dre as an artist, you're thinking of your Pacs, you know, you had guys who weren't affiliated with Death Row also at the time, you know, your Cubes, you know, people like this. And then as a producer, you're thinking of your Dre's, Daz, maybe Quick, you're thinking of all these people. So Warren G kind of got lost in the shuffle, but Warren G had a greater peak than most of those guys. And the sound, the G-Funk sound, like he told you, like he's the pioneer of that sound. Dre was the one who became famous for it, and Dre's sound was a little bigger. You know, it was a little bigger, a little better, but Warren G's was fire also. And to me, when we're talking about role players, this was a guy who had, like, he's sort of like Grant Hill, you know, a guy who like was so good early on and himself was a superstar, and then later on wasn't as big but still contributed and still was pretty dope, even though, you know, the game kind of propped up other people who were doing it a little bigger, a little better. So my number one role player in hip-hop history, Warren G. So let's recap. Hip-hop role players, okay? The best hip-hop role players. Honorable mentions. My first honorable mention was Lady of Rage. My second honorable mention, Sauce Money. My third honorable mention, John Forte. My fourth honorable mention, Cappadona. My fifth honorable mention was Drag On. Top 10 hip-hop role players of all time. Number 10, Rod Digger. Number 9, Freddie Fox. Number 8, Freeway. Number 7, Tragedy Gaddafi. Number 6, AZ. Number 5, Royce the 5'9". Number 4, Killer Mike. Number 3, DOC. Number 2, Keith Murray. And number 1, Warren G. Rod doing Rod. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, make sure you comment, and make sure you tell a friend. Peace.